Hi everyone, welcome back to Smarta.
With Marta. Today we're here to do another science experiment. We got a lot of messages from kids telling us that they really enjoyed watching the one last week and trying it at home. So we thought we would try another one that you can try at home if you like.
Shoutouts.
All right, we're starting with our shoutouts. My shoutout is to George. George, like a lot of you, made Mr. Marta a birthday picture, which he loved and made him feel so happy. But Mr. Marta felt a little bit extra special because one day we went down to get the mail, and from George, he had sent the birthday picture in the mail. How did that make you feel?
Wonderful. It's so nice opening the mailbox and going, rather than the regular old mail you get, I'm like, what is this? It's from George. Oh my God, George sent me something for my birthday. And he had this great Hulk picture he made. I love the eyes in the picture. But getting that in the mail, that just made it so special, George. Thank you so much. And thank you all for the birthday wishes.
Yeah, and I think that what that says to me is we should start sending more things in the mail to people.
I think so, for sure. Definitely.
Okay.
My shout out today goes to two people, Hayumi and Corbin. As Mrs. Marta mentioned, so many of you wrote to us in both classes saying how much you love the science experiment. Please do another one. And Corbin and Hayumi actually sent video of them doing and replicating the last birthday science experiment.
And we love to see people doing that at home.
So Corbin made his different container, different wider slot areas to see how it worked. Hayumi and her brother Makoto did two cupcake experiments. We had Hayumi's with about 4 candles, I think, and Makoto's had like more than 10. You can see at the and it was very neat because in the same time you could see Hayumi's was spinning with 4 candles and Makoto's was going way faster. So Corbin and Hayumi, great job when you're sending the video for science experiment.
Yeah, we love that. Thank you. All right, we're off to jokes. Our first joke is from Lisa Marta. How does a scientist freshen her breath?
Hopefully with toothpaste.
With experiments.
Oh, experiments.
It's a good science joke, right?
I like it.
All right, we also have a joke from
Vivi.
All right.
So this joke's from Vivi. Thanks, Vivi, for sending a joke in. Mrs. Marta's working so hard getting jokes, so thanks, Vivi, for helping her out.
It was a big help.
Vivi's joke is, what is a teacher's favorite nation?
Nation. What?
An explanation.
Oh, very good one.
Nice job, Vivi.
All right, so you can meet us over in the science lab for the experiment.
See you there. Hi, boys and girls. Before we start this week's science experiment, we wanted to do a quick review of the water cycle. Now, I'm not going to teach you about the water cycle because we already learned about the water cycle in class. So to review the water cycle, we know that the sun heats the water on the earth. In rivers, lakes, and streams, when it heats the water, that surface layer of water, turns into a gas and evaporates. We can't see it, it's invisible, it's a gas, it's rising up. As that water rises into the atmosphere, we know the upper atmosphere gets colder the higher you get. When that evaporated water in gas form gets at the colder parts of the atmosphere, it condenses, it turns it back into water. And then we see it as clouds. And when those water droplets form together and they get too heavy, then they fall back to Earth as precipitation in the form of rain, hail, or snow. And then it goes through the whole cycle again. That's the water cycle. Here's Mrs. Marta.
When we were thinking about the water cycle, we started wondering what happens to contaminants or substances that are in the water when it evaporates. So we're thinking like if the ocean has salt in it, what happens to that salt? So we came up with this question. When water evaporates, will other substances evaporate with it? So we're wondering when the water gets heated and goes up, does the salt go up with it? So before we get on to how we're going to do this, we have to make a hypothesis. Remember, we said that's a scientific word for a prediction. So I think that the salt will evaporate with the water. What do you think, Mr. Marta?
I think it will not. I think the water evaporates clean.
Okay, so we've got our plans. It's okay if you're wrong. You have 2 teachers with 2 different answers. One of us is going to be wrong, and it's okay as long as you're not making a crazy hypothesis. Like, I think giraffes will jump in the water and that will make salt fly up in the air.
Or the giraffe jumps in the water and the giraffe will evaporate with the water to the clouds.
That's not what we're talking about. That is not a good scientific hypothesis because you've gone off on a tangent. All right, after you do that, we get to our procedure. So
We had to think of a way to fast forward the water cycle.
Right, because we don't want to like have you watching a video for 3 hours, right? So we thought, how do we fast forward that? And Mr. Marta came up with a solution. So this is what the procedure is, and the procedure is the steps to do the experiment. If you decide to do this at home, you need a grown-up to help you because there is boiling water and glass, and it makes the glass hot with the boiling water. So this is what we're gonna do first. We're gonna use salt as a substance. We're gonna pour some in the bowl. So that is our substance. We're seeing if it can evaporate. Also, to make it a little bit easier to see what's happening, we're going to put some food coloring in there. We've decided to use blue because it's the color of the ocean and it's a little bit easier to see.
And that can make you wonder also, will the water that evaporates, will it evaporate colored? Like, will it be blue
right,
when
that's
it goes
a
up?
substance. We're checking if two substances will evaporate. So we're gonna put the salt, the food coloring in there, and that's kind of simulating the substances in our ocean. We haven't put our ocean in yet. When we have the kettle boiling, we have to do it really fast because we found that when we waited too long, we didn't have as much of the water cycle showing.
We want to take advantage of the quickly evaporation process of boiling water.
Exactly. So we put our salt, we put our food coloring, we get our hot water, we pour it in, we put our land in. So this is simulating the land and the ocean will be around it. Then really quickly, we take this saran wrap we have ready on the side and we cover it up. We put it really tightly so that it's covering the whole dish.
And that saran wrap's going to simulate our upper atmosphere where it's going to get colder. How are we going to make it colder, Mrs.
We
Marta?
are going to put some ice cubes on top to make our upper atmosphere colder. And that is the procedure, right, Mr. Marta?
Correct.
So once we're done the procedure, this is when we start doing this cycle of things that we do over and over. We start with observations. That means we observe or we watch what's happening. So Mr. Marta and I are going to set the timer for 10 minutes. We're not going to leave the video running for 10 minutes, but just so you know, if you do it on your own, 10 minutes is a good time to do that.
Once we finish the procedure, that's when we'll stop the video and set our 10-minute timer and come back.
Right. But as you're doing that, you're going to be observing. So you're going to be watching what's happening in your experiment. You're going to be making an analysis. That means you're analyzing what's happening. You're thinking, well, I saw this happen. That's probably because this happened. That is probably going to lead you to have more questions. Good scientists have a lot of questions, and I know you are a good scientist because you always have a lot of questions. Then I might make more observations and go around and around in a circle. When I'm completely done, I'm going to make a conclusion, and the conclusion is going to answer my question.
So when Mrs. Marta and I stop the video, once the procedure is finished and we set the timer for 10 minutes and we stop the video, we are actually here observing and making our observations. We're not just leaving.
Right, and I think we'll film a little bit of it so you can see it, but we're not going to show you the whole 10 minutes.
And then we'll see at the end what happens.
Okay. Okay, so we've got some salt in the bottom of the bowl and some food coloring. Mr. Marta has the ice ready. We almost have the kettle boiling, and we're getting ready to do this part really fast so we can get the wrap on top.
How much food coloring? There's 5 drops. You can actually see it. And here comes our ocean.
So I'm ready to put Victoria, the land, in there.
This is the part you got to be careful when you don't burn yourself.
Yep, grown-ups do that.
All right, put her in there, Mrs. Marta.
Okay, there goes Victoria. Now we put our saran wrap on. We like to go both directions just to make sure it's sealed. Then Mr. Marta puts the upper atmosphere coldness on top. And now we are ready to observe.
I'm going to set our timer for 10 minutes right now.
Okay, so we're over here. We've kind of just started. Mr. Marta, how much time is left?
Right now there is 9 minutes and 30 seconds remaining.
All right, so we're only 30 seconds in, but we wanted to show you what we can see so far. Whoa, the camera fell over. So we can see that the water on top, the ice cubes, are starting to melt a little bit.
I've also noticed we've made one tiny mistake, is we put in too much water for our glass bowl. Our glass bowl is kind of turned into a boat now rather than land. So it's better if you test it out first. Make sure the glass bowl you're putting inside the ocean is heavy enough that it will displace the water and sink to the bottom. Right now we've got a little bit of boat action going, so the
Why does that matter?
Well, if your boat doesn't stay in the center, then because the weight of the ice is making the condensed water form on the cloud and go to the center, if the boat moves away, it'll drip back into the bowl. Luckily, our boat's big enough; it should be fine. So don't use a plastic bowl on the inside. Make sure it's glass and it's heavy enough.
And use a small enough big bowl. Like, don't use a giant container.
And you really want to make sure that your edges are sealed tightly, because you don't want the evaporation process, the steam escaping.
Do you know what else I'm observing right now is that there is condensation on the side of the bowl.
Yes, it's happening on the sides.
Can you see any droplets forming yet, Mr. Marta?
It's just barely starting to form. I can see a droplet forming.
Can you film from that side a little bit so we can see?
I don't know if we're going to be able to see it just yet.
Oh, I see it. It's hard to see on the camera.
It is. We tried to zoom in. Oh, it's just forming now. Mrs. Martin, you stand behind there to give you a background of red? Because right now, the water's just about to fall. Yeah, stay right there. I'm hoping we get to watch one droplet falling.
I'm curious because our question was, will other substances evaporate with it? Is that drop going to have salt or coloring in it?
And that's why you want your land being able to catch the water. There, we just saw a droplet fall. It worked. This is it's 2 droplets falling. So it's starting to rain. Here comes a third one.
That's good. So we've seen evaporation. That's when the heat actually turned it into a gas and it rose. And we know it rose. We know that because it's stuck to the top.
There it's raining.
And it's condensing when it's making those drops on there. And then when you see it falling, that's the precipitation. Now, our question is, will other substances evaporate with it? Okay. We have about 45 seconds left. So I want to show you what it looks like on the top. There is water melting from the ice, but that water is not going inside our bowl. That is staying outside on top of the saran wrap. That water is only to create the cold environment. We are interested in what's happening to the water inside.
The droplet just fell again.
So we can still see condensation on the bowl. And we're curious what is going to be happening on our inside bowl. Mr. Marta, how much time do we have left?
13 seconds.
Okay, so when the timer goes off, Mr. Marta is going to turn it off. And then we're going to show you kind of how to take this apart so it doesn't disrupt your experiment by dropping the water from the outside in. All right.
Now, we don't want to contaminate the experiment. If I just took off the saran wrap right now, problem is that water from the ice cubes melting on top could go in. We don't want that to happen. So we carefully take off the ice cubes first, throw them into the sink. Be very careful not to burst your cellophane. Now you got to take care of the water that the ice cubes left behind.
Because you don't want that to fall in.
Definitely not. That would contaminate the experiment. So we gently take a paper towel work the best because it'll soak it up the easiest.
But gently, if you press hard, it will break it.
Exactly. There we go, we're getting there. We're just going to get all the water off the top. A little bit of ice cube still there. Just do one more piece of paper towel to make sure. There we go. We've got all the water off the top, Mrs. Marta.
And then when you take this saran wrap off, you're still going to fold the edges up just in case any drops fall in.
And you could, if Mrs. Marta comes in closely, you might see some still condensation on the bottom of the cellophane, which will be our cloud.
This part, can you feel the hot bowl, Mr. Marta?
It's a little bit hot.
Yeah, so this would be a part for a grown-up to do, so you don't hurt yourself.
I don't see any condensation there,
I can see some dropping underneath. I don't know if you can see it on the video, though.
Okay, so now we've got the cloud off. You can see some more rain coming off the bottom of the cloud. We're going to move the cloud out of here. Now you got a grown-up test this because this could be very warm, and it is a little bit warm. So what I'm going to do... Okay, I've got my pod holder, and I've actually waited about a minute, 2 minutes to make sure the glass land, or in this case our boat, has cooled enough. The grown-up test this. I know it's cool enough now, I've already tested it. So you pull that gently out, and I can put it on my pod holder. Now if I tip this, I don't have to tip it, you can see all...
Okay, you're taking it off the video, Mr. Marta.
Sorry, you can see all the water inside our land. You can see there's a blue one from outside of our land. I can wipe that away. But Mrs. Marta, do you see any color on the inside? Maybe film it straight down on the white, Mrs. Marta. I see absolute zero color.
Let's bring it over here a little bit because it's hard to see with the countertop. Can you just, yeah, the water just looks transparent to me.
If I hold up to this white background here, you can see it is perfectly clear. So that, what do we observe, Mrs. Marta?
Well, we know
regards
for
to color.
sure that the food coloring didn't evaporate with it. Now, I'm wondering how we can check if the salt evaporated.
So boys and girls, how could we test if the salt evaporated? What do you think? Hopefully, Mrs. Marta.
In this case, we could taste it. We're not going to drink it. No, we're not going to do that. But normally we don't say taste your science,
It's
but
not always wise to science, depending on what you're using. It can
it's
be
very
dangerous.
rarely wise to
This
taste
is
it.
simply salt. So
We know that we only use water and salt and food coloring, and all of those things are okay to eat. So, Mr. Marta, why don't you give it a taste?
okay, so I'll dip my finger in. Finger is dry. Dip my finger in. 0 salt. I'm gonna let Mrs. Marta try right here. I'm gonna switch cameras, and we can talk about more observations, Mrs. Marta.
All right, let's find out.
Have a little taste test, Mrs. Marta.
I taste 0 salt. I
So-
see 0 food coloring, and I taste 0 salt.
What are you concluding?
Well, if I look at this, I've done my observations. I've analyzed it. I've said I taste 0 salt and I see 0 food coloring. So I think the other substances didn't evaporate. It does leave me a lot of questions. I'm going to come back to those in a minute. So I should maybe have a question arrow to down here too. My conclusion is that when water evaporates, other substances don't evaporate with it. And that is not what my hypothesis is, but that does not mean that I'm wrong or that's bad. Scientists make hypotheses all the time because they're trying to figure out what might happen, but it doesn't have to be right.
Now, you may think, boys and girls, because we've proven that when water evaporates, it is clean. Water evaporates clean. You may think, oh, when it rains, then it's safe to drink rainwater. It's not. I know why it's not. Can you think of why it's not? Mr. March, should we tell them, or is that another?
I think that's something they could find out.
Yeah. So figure out, boys and girls, if we've proven that water, when it evaporates, it's clean. We could drink it. However, why is it that when rain falls, it may not be safe to drink? What's contaminating the water in the clouds? What's
Okay.
happening?
And my last thought is, remember I said let's move questions down here too? Now that I'm done, I have quite a few questions about my experiment, and I would probably do it again, and I would try a couple of things. What if I put a different substance in there? What if I put sand in there instead of salt? What would happen then? What if I put less hot water in there? What if I put a smaller container in there? What if I put only 1 ice cube on top? What if I covered the top with ice cubes? I have so many questions about things that I could do to practice my experiment, and I hope that you will try this experiment with your grown-up and maybe ask some more questions.
The only thing I'll caution that, boys and girls, Mrs. Marta and I both really encourage you to try this experiment and put different things in, but make sure you talk to your adult and figure out the only things you're putting in your water is things that you could comfortably eat. So
Right.
You could put maybe applesauce in.
Sure, and maybe flour or baking soda. I would, if I wanted to do it with sand, because I do want to do it with sand, I'll be able to see in my water if that's evaporated with it. I don't need to taste it. In this case, we just wanted to taste it because it was salt. So you could put things that you don't eat in there, just don't taste it. All right, Rexy has a joke for you. Why did the T-Rex run around his bed? So he could catch up on his sleep.